Examining how different countries formulate and implement their foreign policies involves looking at the unique processes and structures each country uses to develop, approve, and execute decisions on the international stage. Here's a breakdown of how a few countries approach this. 1. The United States. The United States has a decentralized, multi-actor system for foreign policy, blending executive authority with checks and balances from other branches. Executive branch, President and State Department. The President, often seen as the primary driver of foreign policy, has significant authority in setting international agendas, negotiating treaties, and directing military actions, though not declaring war, which is Congress's power. The Department of State implements policy through diplomacy, working with ambassadors and foreign envoys to manage U.S. interests abroad. Congress plays a significant role in shaping policy through its powers to approve budgets, ratify treaties, and oversee foreign aid spending. Congress can also pass resolutions or laws that direct specific actions, as seen in trade or sanctions policies. For example, the War Powers Resolution of 1923 was enacted to check the President's power to send U.S. troops into conflict without congressional approval. Public opinion and interest groups. In democracies like the US, public opinion, lobbying, and media coverage shape foreign policy, especially during election cycles. For instance, lobbying groups like the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, IPAC, and public opinion on issues like US-China relations can strongly influence congressional voting and policy decisions. Hashtag 2. China. China's foreign policy is centralized with strict control by the Communist Party of China, CPC, Politburo, and central leadership. The Chinese president, as General Secretary of the Communist Party, directs policy in consultation with the Politburo Standing Committee, the country's top decision-making body. These officials coordinate with key departments like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but maintain high centralization in decision-making. National development goals and strategic vision. China's foreign policy often aligns closely with national development goals set by the party, such as the Belt and Road Initiative, a large-scale infrastructure project aiming to enhance trade routes and increase Chinese influence abroad. Policies are typically set with long-term goals, providing continuity and stability in international relations. Military and state-owned enterprises. The military, People's Liberation Army, and state-run enterprises play significant roles in implementing foreign policy, particularly through infrastructure projects in Asia and Africa. For instance, Chinese firms in the PLA often participate in joint construction projects under BRI, blending economic influence with strategic interests. Russia. Russia's foreign policy is strongly centralized under the president, but involves key ministries and state apparatus. Presidency and the Security Council. The president holds primary control over foreign policy, and Russia's Security Council, which includes high-level military and intelligence officials, advises on national security. President Vladimir Putin, for example, has used this structure to pursue assertive policies, such as the annexation of Crimea and involvement in Syria. Foreign Ministry. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs manages diplomatic relations and negotiations with other countries. While technically separate, it often follows closely the president's directives, exemplified by Russia's support for separatist movements in Eastern Europe under Kremlin guidance. Intelligence agencies. Russian intelligence agencies like the FSB and SVR play a substantial role in foreign policy through covert operations, cyber activities, and influence campaigns aimed at both internal stability and external influence. For example, Russian cyber activities targeting other countries, like alleged interference in US elections, show the unconventional methods employed in foreign policy. France operates a semi-presidential system with both the president and the prime minister involved in foreign policy, though typically the president takes the lead. President and prime minister. The president usually has primary authority in foreign policy matters, while the prime minister may be involved in implementation or legislative aspects. However, during cohabitation, when the president and prime minister are from opposing parties, they share responsibilities more equally. For example, during the cohabitation between President Jacques Chirac and Prime Minister Lionel Jospin, foreign policy needed careful negotiation to align both leaders' positions. Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs. This ministry oversees diplomatic missions, trade relations, and development aid. France's colonial history influences its policy in Africa, where it has ongoing military and economic interests, as seen in its involvement in the Sahel region to combat terrorism. Influence of the European Union. As an EU member, France's foreign policy is also influenced by EU directives and common policies, such as sanctions against Russia. France's role within the EU allows it to leverage broader European alliances, especially on trade and environmental agreements. Conclusion. This comparative analysis shows that countries' foreign policies reflect unique political systems, historical context, and strategic priorities. Centralized states, e.g. China, Russia, centralized control often leads to stable long-term foreign policies, though these may lack public input or adaptability to political sentiments. These countries can quickly implement consistent policies that align with national goals, often at the expense of transparency and public feedback. Decentralized democracies, e.g. United States, India. Democracies like the US and India have dynamic foreign policy processes that can adapt to public opinion and legislative oversight, balancing a range of competing interests. This adaptability is valuable, but can sometimes lead to fragmented policies or slower decision-making. Hybrid systems, e.g. France, semi-presidential systems like France's combine elements of centralized and decentralized approaches with a balance of executive control and institutional checks. This can lead to flexible foreign policy responses, especially when the president and prime minister cooperate. However, it may complicate decision-making in periods of political disagreement, like cohabitation. By comparing these different foreign policy processes, we can better understand how internal systems shape a country's behavior on the global stage. Countries with centralized control may pursue consistent long-term goals, while democracies balance varied interests and adapt to changing public views. Hybrid systems, in turn, reflect a blend of stability and responsiveness, each uniquely tailored to the country's political environment and history.